It was late at night when the phone buzzed softly on the bedside table, pulling me out of a restless sleep. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from an unknown number, along with a photo. A woman clinging tightly to Michael Carter, my husband, both of them wearing wide, radiant smiles. Clearly a moment of intimacy after a wild night. I sighed, not surprised in the slightest. This wasn't the first time. Instead of anger, all I felt was exhaustion, like an old scar being lightly scraped. I once believed love was eternal, but now it was nothing more than a cold arrangement between two people who once loved each other. I forwarded the photo to Michael without a single word, then sent him the details of a villa complex I had my eye on since last week. Let's buy 2 houses here for the kids as this year's Christmas gift for them. The development had just opened for sale in a prime location near the city center, with full amenities, a swimming pool, gym, children's playground, and large green space like an oasis in the middle of the rush. I had taken my mother to view it twice. She approved, and I knew it was the perfect opportunity. Michael would pay for it, and I would make sure everything belonged to the children. Not long after, the phone buzzed again. Michael replied, "All right." Just one short word, but enough for me to act. I immediately messaged the sales agent I'd arranged with earlier. "Tomorrow, my husband and I will come to sign the contracts. Yes, 2 units, paid in full, under my daughter's and my son's names." I smiled in the dark, feeling like I was controlling a chess game. What was in my mind at that moment? Not revenge, but protection. I had learned that love can break, but my children's future couldn't be left to fate. The next morning, I stood waiting outside the real estate office, the chilly Florida winter wind stinging my face. Michael arrived late, stepping out of a gleaming luxury car, the collar of his shirt slightly askew, revealing a glaring red mark, evidence of a reckless night. I couldn't help but smirk, teasing, "Well, you've been busy, haven't you?" He stopped, his eyes flicking over me with irritation, but said nothing. Instead, he handed me a bank card. "Can't I just transfer the money to you? Do you always have to drag me here to sign in person?" I shook my head, wagging my index finger in front of him as if scolding a child. "Number. The houses are gifts for the kids, counted as their separate assets, so of course you, their father, have to sign in person. What if one day you accuse me of misappropriating marital property?" Michael shot me a sharp look, his eyes narrowing in annoyance, but I knew he would give in. "Fine. You know I'm not that kind of person." I knew, at least for now, but people change. When we were madly in love, I never imagined he would betray our marriage so easily. The sales agent I had arranged with greeted us warmly. We sat down, the paperwork spread out in front of us. Everything went smoothly. Michael signed with reluctance, while I watched every detail to ensure our children's names were clearly written. As we left, Michael gestured for me to get into his car, a familiar habit from the past. I shook my head. "No need. I'll drive myself." After a pause, I turned back and, in a voice both gentle and warning, told him, "With your women, have your fun, but don't spend too much. If you burn through too much money, it'll be a problem if I have to show up and collect it myself." Michael let out a crooked, mocking laugh. "You're really generous now, not like before." I looked at him, my thoughts stirring. How was I before? The first time I found out Michael had gone out for another woman, I wanted nothing more than to send him straight to hell. That fury burned like fire, making me tremble uncontrollably. But now, I had changed. Not because I forgave him, but because I had learned to protect myself and my children from unnecessary wounds. Michael and I had met in college, during those dreamy student days on the Florida State campus. We were deeply in love, sharing dreams of starting a business together. I stood by him through the hardest years, working ourselves to the bone, eating moldy bread, and holding on to hope for the future. When the business started to thrive and turn a profit, we naturally walked down the aisle, becoming husband and wife. The wedding was simple but warm, with friends' blessings and bright smiles. Not long after, good news came. I was pregnant with twins. Back then, I thought life couldn't get happier. I would caress my belly, imagining a perfect family. 2 kids running around the house, Michael holding me every night. But then, right before I was about to give birth, Michael had an affair. With my belly heavy and awkward, I walked into his office and caught him with his secretary. The sight cut into me like a knife. My hands clutched the doorframe, trembling, tears streaming down my cheeks. I almost went into premature labor. Lying in a hospital bed on bed rest, Michael came to me with a regretful face. "Emma, she seduced me. Can you forgive me just this once?" I looked at him, my mind in turmoil. Is it that when men cheat, they all blame the other woman? Does that mean he bears no fault? How can a man cheat alone? Both of them were trash. No matter how sorry he was, so what? Our love had already cracked beyond repair. To make amends, Michael transferred all the property in the house to my name, a silent apology. Not long after, I gave birth to the twins in excruciating pain. 1 boy, 1 girl. Their cries filled the air, carrying joy mixed with sorrow. That time was the darkest period of my life. On one hand, I was happy for their arrival, holding them close and whispering love. On the other, I was heartbroken over their father's betrayal. That pain couldn't be put into words, like a wound that kept bleeding without healing. But life had to go on. The only way I knew to cope was to pour all my feelings onto Michael, hating him, despising him, cursing him in my heart day and night. Do you think that made him change? Of course not. After being caught cheating the first time, Michael did quiet down for a while. He knew how to make money, loved the kids, and took care of the family. Everyone who knew about it urged me to give him another chance. But a man who cheats once will never cheat only once. On Anna and Ethan's very first birthday, the room was bright with balloons and flowers, but Michael was still nowhere to be seen. I glanced at the clock, called for the 3rd time, and heard nothing but the hollow ringing tone. My heart skipped, not from surprise, but from the old pain flaring again. I knew he was somewhere, with someone, just like all the other times, but today was special for our children, and his absence was like a knife slicing straight into my chest. Finally, Michael walked in, over an hour late, his suit wrinkled, a forced smile on his face. My eyes caught on the glaring smear of red lipstick on his shirt collar. Anger surged through me like fire, searing and relentless. I grabbed his hand and pulled him into a corner behind the living room, away from the curious eyes of my parents and his. "What's wrong?" Michael asked, feigning confusion, as if he truly didn't know. I gritted my teeth, lowering my voice as I pointed to the stain. "What's wrong? Today is our children's birthday. Both our parents are here, and you—" I couldn't finish the sentence, my nails digging into my palms until it hurt. Michael's face shifted to alarm, and he grabbed my hand. "Just let me explain." But I yanked it free, my eyes stinging, fighting to hold back tears. "Go change your shirt now," I said through clenched teeth, forcing my voice not to shake. Looking over at Anna and Ethan playing with their grandparents, I took a deep breath and forced a smile. Today was their day. I couldn't let Michael's selfishness ruin it for them. That night, after all the guests had gone and the kids were asleep, I tore through his car, finding nothing but a few empty beer cans and the faint trace of an unfamiliar perfume. Finally, I switched on the dash cam, and the sound of Michael's flirty laughter with another woman filled the air, sharp and cutting into my heart. Michael stood there, fumbling. "It's nothing." But as the laughter continued, he fell silent, his gaze dropping. "Michael, you bastard!" I slapped him hard, my hand trembling with both rage and pain. He didn't fight back, just lit a cigarette and pulled a bank card from the console. "There's $800,000 in here," Michael said, his voice low but with no hint of remorse. "Can't you be a little more understanding? The company's weight is all on me. I'm exhausted." I stared at him. Exhausted? Who isn't? I stayed up through the nights caring for the children, making sure every meal and every hour of their sleep was right, while he sought his pleasures elsewhere. "So, being tired is your excuse for cheating? Then can I go out and find a man too?" Clutching the card tightly, I said, "Michael, I want a divorce." I turned and walked back into the house, my heart heavy. Of course, that divorce never happened. After that night, Michael brought home $300,000 worth of jewelry, setting it in front of me like an unspoken apology. I looked at the glittering pieces and felt only emptiness. I had never truly wanted a divorce, not because I still loved him, but because of the children. Anna and Ethan needed a home, even if it was only a shell, and I needed stability to give them a better future. After the children were born, Michael's business only grew. Within a year, his wealth had soared to levels we once thought impossible. Because the twins were premature and frail, I didn't work, staying home to care for them, holding them when they cried for milk, singing to them when they couldn't sleep. I knew I couldn't be apart from them, didn't want them to grow up with less than they needed. So I chose to spend Michael's money, without hesitation, without guilt. A new house, a new car, fine clothes, everything for me and the children. I wanted them to live in comfort, never to worry as I once did growing up. That was why, all those years, I never seriously considered divorce. Michael knew his mistakes couldn't be mended with love, so he used money to silence me. A luxury car, a beachfront apartment, every expense covered. I accepted it all, never refusing. Horseback riding, archery, golf, skiing. If Anna and Ethan wanted it, I let them learn, let them experience. They went to the best schools, took expensive enrichment classes, flew around the world to explore. I watched them grow, bright and carefree, and told myself, this is the right thing. Whatever Michael is, the kids will never lack anything. For over 10 years, I spent the money Michael earned, enjoying the benefits he brought, while slowly draining away every bit of love I had once given him. Now, the only connection between us was money. One evening, after bringing Anna and Ethan home from riding lessons, I sat on the sofa, watching them play in the living room. Anna was painting a colorful picture, while Ethan was building with Lego, chattering non-stop about his favorite horse. I smiled, a rare sense of peace slipping into my heart. Michael could keep living his life, with his lipstick stains and his lies. But me? I had chosen my own path. Not one of love or forgiveness, but the path of a mother willing to do anything to protect her children. So when he mocked me about only caring about money, I gave a faint smile, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm a very generous person. Back then, when I picked fights with you, it was because I didn't understand things. You can relax now. I've learned to be open-minded. As long as there's enough money, wherever you go, whatever you do, I don't care. Michael's face darkened at once, his eyes flashing with a strange anger. Emma Carter, in your heart now, is money really that important? He asked, his voice low, as if trying to restrain himself. I looked him straight in the eye without a second's hesitation. Of course. Without money, how could my children and I have the life we do now? Thinking of Anna and Ethan, both about to face their college entrance exams, I pressed him. Transfer the money now. The kids are about to take their exams. I want to take them somewhere to relax and ease the pressure. My beauty package card is about to expire, too. In my mind, I skimmed through the list of big expenses, a trip, a new dress, and maybe another sum tucked away for the children's future. Without waiting for me to say more, Michael pulled out his phone, his fingers moving quickly over the screen. Seconds later, my own phone buzzed, a notification that $500,000 had just been deposited into my account. I smiled and said softly, "Thank you." That smile wasn't from joy, but part of the game I'd learned to play. As long as he was willing to spend, I had no problem acting pleasant. But then I hardened my tone, my eyes turning cold. And one more thing. 2 months from now, the kids take their college entrance exams. That woman from last night, deal with her properly. If she affects them in any way, I won't forgive you. Michael let out a cold snort, slamming the car door. Relax, I know what to do. I watched his car speed away, shaking my head slightly. A mother has to be strong. As long as my children are untouched, I can endure anything. But if he ever lets Anna and Ethan feel even the slightest heartbreak, I swear I'll drag him straight to hell. Back at my company, I stepped into the familiar space, where the scent of new fabric mingled with the soft hum of sewing machines. 2 seamstresses were guiding new staff, sketching designs for the next gown. I loved the dresses. Every stitch and seam was a way to assert myself. When I first learned Michael was cheating, I spent money like mad to vent my rage, ordering lavish dresses from the best tailors. But over time, I no longer wanted to be just a buyer. As Anna and Ethan grew older, I traveled everywhere to study management, met with renowned designers, and turned this small room into my own workshop. My company was filled with fabrics, cutting tools, and dreams I had built with my own hands. Every day, while the kids were at school, I would sit quietly, cutting, sewing, designing. The busyness pulled me away from the pain, each stitch like mending a shattered heart. The dresses from my company I gifted to my mother and mother-in-law. I wore them when picking up my children, at parties with friends, or accompanying Michael to meet clients. Each time, I received endless compliments. "Emma, where's that dress from?" "It's stunning," they would all ask, then place orders at my company. In 2 months, Anna and Ethan would graduate and take their college entrance exams. Today, I wanted to make a new dress for myself, and a special one for Anna to wear at her high school graduation. I walked over to the fabrics, my hand brushing over the soft silks as designs took shape in my mind. As I was carefully selecting cloth, a voice came from the door. "Hello?" I looked up, saw everyone else was busy, so I replied and stepped out. A young woman, beautiful, stood there, her eyes sweeping over me as if appraising. One glance, and my instincts told me this was her, the one who had sent me the intimate photo with Michael last night. She smiled, her hand brushing her belly. "I'd like to order a dress, but I'm newly pregnant, so I'm not sure what you'd suggest." Keeping my face calm, I began taking her measurements, speaking evenly. "Since we don't know how your pregnancy will progress and your weight may change, I'd suggest a full button style." Before I could finish, she interrupted, her voice trembling. "I don't even know if this baby will survive. Please, do you think my baby will be born?" I stopped, looking straight into her eyes. If it were someone else's child, of course it could. But if it was Michael's, my husband in name, I would never allow it. She gripped my hand tightly. "Michael wants to break up with me. But the baby is innocent. I promise, once it's born, I won't fight for anything." tears rolled down her cheeks, and a few people in the workshop glanced up. I took a deep breath, led her to the reception area, my voice cold. "Does Michael know you're pregnant?" She shook her head. "Not yet." I nodded slightly, my eyes flicking to her stomach. "All right, go home and wait. I'll tell him for you. Don't worry, you'll get an answer." But inside, I knew the answer I'd give wasn't the one she hoped for. As soon as she left, I headed straight to Michael's company, my anger blazing like fire. He was sitting in his office, startled when he saw me. "Honey, what brings you here?" I slammed the door and slapped him hard, the sound echoing in the silent room. "You dare get someone else pregnant?" Michael froze, his cheek flushed. What baby?" I sneered. "Still pretending? She came to my workshop herself." Michael's face drained of color, stammering, "I always use protection. And besides, I made it clear to her that I have a family. It was just for fun." "I don't care," I said, my voice low and full of contempt. Stepping closer, I looked him straight in the eye. "Michael, I warned you. Don't mess with my children." He stood there, pale and speechless. I turned and walked away, my heart heavy but resolute. Michael could do whatever he wanted out there, but my boundary was Anna and Ethan. Everything he earned, everything he had to belong to my children. All these years, I've endured to keep this home intact, but if he dares cross that line, I will show no mercy. That child, of course, could not be kept. I quietly followed behind, watching as Michael led the woman, sobbing uncontrollably, into an illegal clinic. Seeing with my own eyes her pale face as she was wheeled out of the operating room was the moment I finally felt at ease. I knew I was ruthless. But in this world, without ruthlessness, you cannot live in peace. For the sake of my own interests and my children's, I had to do it. After the procedure, Michael left her a sum of money, then texted me, "It's done." He left quickly, as if wanting to erase all traces. I walked into the room, standing at the foot of the bed. She was curled up under the blanket, her face wet with tears, her red eyes glaring at me with hatred. "It was you?" she cried, her voice trembling. I looked at her, my eyes showing a flicker of pity, but my tone was cold. "Life is innocent, but the child in your belly should not exist." I paused, letting the words sink in. "You've already received plenty from Michael. Use that money to start over. If he truly loved you, the baby would never have been abandoned. You're still young. Choose what's best for yourself." I leaned in slightly, my eyes sweeping over her pale but still beautiful face. "Women like you. I've seen many around Michael." She murmured weakly, "He's your husband. How can you stand it?" I gave a faint smile, but didn't answer. If I still loved Michael, of course I couldn't stand it. But that love had died long ago, on the day I discovered his affair while I was pregnant with Anna and Ethan. Men, I had learned, are never as reliable as money. I remembered the first time I caught Michael cheating. If I hadn't been pregnant, I would have divorced him instantly. If I had only just become pregnant, I might not have chosen to give birth. Anna and Ethan should have been born into a complete family, expected and cherished by both parents, not into a marriage that was nothing but a shell. But life didn't give me that choice. All I could do was fight for every possible advantage for my children. More than 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Anna and Ethan's college entrance exams ended, and both walked out of the exam room with bright, confident smiles. Proud of their year-long effort, I took them on a carefree shopping spree and began planning a relaxing vacation. Michael came along, paying for everything, and from the outside, we looked no different from a happy family of 4. On the road, the exam results were announced. Anna and Ethan had exceeded all expectations, both admitted into their dream universities. I hugged them, my eyes brimming with tears, my heart swelling with joy. This is really wonderful. Anna and Ethan looked at me, their eyes shining. Mom, thank you, Ethan said seriously. Anna rushed over to hug me, kissing my cheek. I love you most. Michael stepped up, placing his hand on my shoulder, his voice low. All these years, you've worked so hard? I didn't avoid his touch, but I didn't respond either. All these years, in front of the children, we had always maintained the image of a harmonious couple. Not sweet, not intimate, but never letting them see us fight. It's because you worked hard, I said, wiping my eyes. I'm just so happy. Looking at Anna and Ethan, once little children, now grown, accomplished, and sensible, I knew everything had been worth it. I turned to Michael, blinking. The kids should thank their dad, too. You've worked hard to provide for us. Michael met my eyes, pausing, his gaze holding a flicker of something unreadable. Thankfully, the children's laughter shattered the strange moment. Thanks, Dad, Ethan said, while Anna piped up playfully. Dad, I've graduated. You promised after my exams you'd buy me a car. Michael laughed heartily. I'll buy it. You and your brother will both get new cars. I had never stopped the children from being close to Michael. On the contrary, I taught them that their father worked hard for the family and they should be grateful. Because of this, their father-child relationship had always been good. Anna and Ethan were obedient, excellent students, and our family appeared harmonious, something that made many people admire Michael. He loved being praised, and because he loved the children, he was willing to spend freely. By the weekend, I was standing beneath the glittering lights of the banquet hall, the crisp clink of wine glasses ringing in the air. Michael had thrown this party to celebrate Anna and Ethan, achieving their dream of getting into a prestigious university. He had invited plenty of close friends and business partners, and the room was alive with congratulations. Michael, you've really raised your kids well, someone said, lifting a glass in genuine admiration. I stood there with a faint, polite smile, a bitter irony rising inside me. All these years, I had been the one pouring my heart into the children, while Michael, aside from providing money, had done nothing else. And yet, all the praise now was being showered on him. Michael, beaming, raised his glass, not forgetting to mention me. It's all thanks to my wife, who's quietly supported us all these years. I glanced at him, a little surprised by the words, but quickly slipped into the role, smiling sweetly as I praised him in front of the guests. The crowd murmured in admiration, complimenting our perfect marriage. Michael and I exchanged a look, clinking glasses with a few partners, our smiles picture perfect. But deep down, I knew this was just an act, a performance we had replayed for years to maintain the image of a happy family in public. After a few pleasantries, Michael stepped aside to talk business with his partners, laughing heartily. I stayed with a group of society wives, taking a sip of wine and listening to their chatter. Lauren, the wife of Robert Thompson, Michael's biggest client, leaned over and whispered, "Emma, what you told me last time really worked. My husband just bought me a beachfront villa." I smiled, unsurprised. Men with money are prone to straying, and Robert was no exception. But Lauren was different from me. She couldn't tolerate betrayal, constantly fighting with her husband and pushing herself into misery. I remembered the time she arranged to meet me, her eyes red from crying, telling me how she'd caught Robert cheating. She had even seen Michael at a club, holding a young woman in a dark corner. Feeling for me, she texted me the whole story through sobs. I simply texted Michael, "A friend saw you at a club. Are you coming home tonight?" As expected, just minutes later, my phone buzzed. $500,000 had been transferred to my account. Lauren had stared at me in shock. "You're not angry?" I showed her my phone screen with a bright smile. Lauren, what's the point of being angry? Anger makes you sick and pushes the money away. I can get mad if I want to, but I'll do it at the spa. Come with me, my treat. She had looked at me with a mix of admiration and confusion. Thanks to you, I just made myself a nice sum, I added lightly, my tone calm but full of meaning. Having chosen not to divorce, I knew I had to trade for something else. Compared to money, everything else seemed worth it. I had once loved Michael, once believed in love. But now, in my 40s, I was no longer the girl who only dreamed. Michael sent money regularly for me and the kids, and even if he never came home again, I wouldn't care. I turned to Lauren with a smile. If you choose not to divorce, then spend his money boldly. Treat him like an ATM. Don't let yourself suffer. It'll only age you. Lauren nodded, her smile lighter. I'm not as foolish as before. Look, I'm younger now, right? I laughed, not holding back my compliment. Absolutely, Lauren. You're nothing like when I first met you. She glanced over at Anna, happily chatting with her grandparents, wearing a stunning fitted dress from my company. Is that dress Anna's wearing from your company? I have 3 big events next month. When you're free, I'll bring my daughter by. I nodded warmly. Lauren, you're always welcome. Having my biggest client personally support my business, there was nothing better. But then Lauren pointed discreetly toward a man sitting near Michael and whispered, The other day, I overheard Robert calling that guy. Sounds like he's trying to steal one of Michael's deals. Keep an eye out. I followed her gaze and filed away the warning. Lauren said this because she considered me a friend, and I appreciated her genuine smile. Even though I no longer loved Michael, we were still married, still a family, still had children together. If his business did well, my children's future was secure. More importantly, his assets would one day belong to Anna and Ethan. For their sake, I had to care. I nodded at Lauren, my eyes full of gratitude. Inside, I told myself I'd warn Michael to be more careful, not to let any mistakes jeopardize the children's future. When the party ended, Anna and Ethan made plans to go out with their close friends. I transferred them some extra money, telling them to stay safe. They nodded obediently, their smiles bright. I wasn't worried. They were good kids, and among their friends was Lauren's youngest son. Even though the boy wasn't academically gifted, much to Lauren's frustration, I didn't believe grades were the only measure of a child's worth. For Anna and Ethan, I had already prepared every safety net. Even if academics failed, Michael's earnings were enough to let them live comfortably for life. But looking at them today, I knew they wouldn't need a safety net. They had already reached for their dreams on their own. When the guests left, Michael was drunk from rounds with his partners. I called his assistant to take him home. In the bedroom, I helped him take off his shoes, the movement so familiar it felt like habit. Michael let me do it, eyes closed. When I was done, he suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace, burying his face in my neck, his voice hoarse. Emma, I'm really happy today. My whole body stiffened, a strange feeling rising inside me. It had been a long time since we had been this close. We had been living separately ever since I discovered his first affair, back before Anna and Ethan were even born. But in this moment, I suddenly remembered Michael's early days in business, when he came home just as drunk, holding me and promising, Emma, I just got my first order. I'm going to give you a good life. Emma, I love you. He did give me a good life, just as he promised. But love? That had vanished long ago. I pushed him away, my voice cold. Don't pretend you're drunk. Stay away from me. Michael opened his eyes, his pupils hazy from the alcohol, but he still tried to pull me back into his arms. Emma, I was wrong before. We're older now. Let's put the past behind us, okay? He leaned closer, his fingers slipping swiftly to the hem of my dress, as if trying to rekindle something long gone. My hands clenched tight, anger flaring. A sharp slap rang out, stopping Michael's movement instantly. He held his cheek, looking at me in shock. "Emma!" I lowered my head, my voice firm. "Michael, don't touch me." Michael gave a short, angry laugh. He stood up, walked to the wardrobe, pulled out a small suitcase and slammed it to the floor. "All these years, you'd rather use toys than let me touch you." I looked him straight in the eye and whispered, "Toys are cleaner than you." Michael froze, as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "What did you say?" he growled. I lifted my head, enunciating every word. "Michael, toys are cleaner than you." Before he could erupt, my tears fell. Not because I wanted them to, but because it wasn't time yet. Sometimes tears are a woman's weapon, the thing that makes a man surrender. How many women have you slept with all these years? The blunt words cut through the air like a sharp blade. It had been a long time since I'd spoken to Michael this way. For years, I had invested in myself. Smooth skin, a toned figure, looking far younger than my age. Even while crying, I still carried my poise and beauty. Michael looked at me, not with boredom, but with a flicker of pity. "If it weren't for the children, I would never have stayed with you," I said, my voice breaking. "Michael, isn't that enough?" He lowered his head, his face shadowed. I was wrong. But I knew his remorse wasn't born of love. It was calculation. I understood Michael better than he thought. For years, I had let him enjoy his freedom outside, never making a scene. I kept good relationships with the wives of his business partners, which had helped his company in no small way. Now, with age creeping up and Ethan and Ava grown, he wanted to return to the comfort of family life. He wanted to restore our marriage, but for me, it was too late. Michael was no longer the man I loved, just a money-making machine in this house. I still needed him. At least, I needed his assets. If we divorced now, he would take half, and I couldn't let my children lose what they rightfully deserved. I tilted my head, resting it on his shoulder, my voice soft. "If you want to live peacefully with me, then show me your sincerity." Sure enough, Michael began to change. He reined himself in, spent more time with the family and the company. Before Ethan and Ava started school, he took us shopping, proactively transferring money so I could spend freely. He checked in, showed care in small ways, and gave me expensive gifts, a diamond ring, a new jewelry set. Only a fool would turn down such things. I accepted them all, sometimes deliberately nitpicking. I don't really like this bag. It's not the latest model, and this diamond feels a bit small. Michael didn't get annoyed. He just smiled and transferred more money. Pick whatever you like. Going back and forth like this, we almost seemed like a young couple in love again, maybe even more in sync than before. At one business reception, Lauren teased me. "You're amazing." Last time Michael was at my house, he saw a bag I had and asked which brand it was so he could buy you the exact same one. The people around us laughed. I just smiled and didn't respond. From across the room, Michael looked at me with pride in his eyes. I returned his gaze with one full of affection, but lifted my glass to hide the mocking smile behind it. All these years, there was nothing I lacked. Bags, clothes, shoes, diamonds. What hadn't I bought? Michael was just running laps to make up for his wrongs. After years of cheating, he did a little, and people already thought he had changed, while I now had a good husband who came back to his family. But I knew better. An intelligent woman, one who sees love clearly, won't be swept away again. On the drive home, Michael had drunk a little too much, sitting quietly in the passenger seat while I drove. I brought up Ava. Ava called today. She said she wants to intern at the company over the holidays. Find her a position where she can learn something. Michael sat up. What about Ethan? I smiled. Ethan wants to join some research center. I'm not sure which one. Either way, let him follow his own path. I had spoken honestly with both of them. The family company was theirs. Either of them could take it over. If Ethan chose research, I supported him. If Ava wanted to run the company, I agreed. Michael seemed uneasy, but still nodded. All right. Either way is fine. I reached over and patted his leg lightly, a gesture of reassurance. During the summer break, Ava began her internship at her father's company, starting from the lowest position. She was quick, hardworking, and polite with everyone, and before long, she grasped the work with surprising speed. I had once told Michael, whenever you go meet clients, take Ava with you. Let her broaden her horizons and build connections. He nodded, and I saw the pride in his eyes when he looked at his daughter. It wasn't long before the entire company knew. Ava would soon take over. At charity galas and afternoon teas with the wives of business partners, I also brought Ava along. I would joke and say a few words, introducing her. In the future, please look after my daughter. Everyone would laugh and nod warmly. In the past, we only brought our children to gatherings so they could play. But now, Michael and I were training Ava as the successor. Things were different. In the business world, men may hold much of the power, but women like me, like Ava, would never settle for being lesser. Sometimes Ava would ask, her tone still innocent, Mom, I'm still in school and only just interning. Isn't this a bit fast? I would pat her head and smile. My love, some things are better to secure early. Michael once joked, with a hint of unease, I'm not even 50 yet, and you already want Ava to replace me? I knew this business was the work of half his life, so I took his hand and teased, Ava won't graduate for a few more years. By then, both of us will be over 50, getting old. Handing the company to her, then traveling the world together. Wouldn't that be better? Michael laughed heartily, nodding in satisfaction. You're right. That's still a long way off. Time flew, and Ethan and Ava graduated in turn. Ethan chose to continue his studies, passionate about research. Ava was enamored with the business world, working carefully, decisively, no less capable than Michael. Seeing her take on responsibility so independently gave me peace of mind. With Ava managing the company, I took Michael to visit Ethan. When the children had just entered university, I had urged Michael to buy villas in the cities where they studied, using the excuse that it was for convenience. In truth, it was my way of building up personal assets for them. After staying with Ethan for a few days and not wanting to disturb his studies, I planned a new trip, inviting Robert and Lauren, friends whose companies had also been handed over to their children. The trip lasted half a year, taking us from wind-swept coasts to ancient cities. During this time, under Ava's leadership, the company ran without a hitch, and profits even exceeded expectations. Michael returned to oversee operations for a while, but I noticed he was growing tired, the look in his eyes hinting at wanting to rest. One day, he suggested, why don't we travel again? I smiled and agreed. In the years that followed, Michael and I continued traveling, from snow-capped mountains to sun-drenched islands. Time passed and Ava officially took over the company, leading it with the confidence and capability I had always been proud of. Ethan married his college sweetheart and had a beautiful little girl. Ava chose not to marry but adopted 2 children from her charity work. I never interfered with my children's choices. As long as they were safe and happy, I was content. One day, Michael sat beside me, his voice filled with sentiment. Emma, I'm lucky to have married you. Let's stay together until we're old. I shook my head, my tone calm. This is where it ends, Michael. Let's get a divorce. Michael froze, his voice trembling. A divorce? He stared at me, eyes wide with shock. Since returning to the family, he had made an effort, toward me and the children, leaving nothing to criticize. But my heart was no longer with this man. When there were benefits, I gladly took them. When he opposed me, I showed no mercy. He thought I had forgiven him, but apart from a few early conflicts, I had never argued with him. Why? Because in my eyes, he was only a tool to make money. I looked straight at him and said without thinking, "If you couldn't make money, do you think I could have lived with you this long?" My words were like a knife. Michael froze, then flared with anger. "All these decades, I've always kept you in my heart, and you never cared." He paused, his voice dropping. "You still haven't forgiven me?" I answered coldly, "No." For me, the wound was permanent. There was no forgiveness. I stood, looking out the window, my eyes sweeping over the garden where Ethan and Ava had once played. I had lived through the most painful days, from a betrayed wife to a strong mother, to a woman who controlled her own life. Michael might believe he had redeemed himself, but to me, everything had only ever been a transaction. For the children, for the future. I turned back to him, looking at him one last time. We've fulfilled our responsibility to the children. Now, I want to live for myself. He sat there in silence, his eyes hollow. I walked out of the room, feeling lighter than I had in years. Divorce at the first sign of betrayal? Many would choose that, to free themselves. But for me, divorcing then would have meant my children growing up in the middle of conflict and harm. I chose to stay, to turn pain into strength, to turn Michael into a tool to build my children's future. That was my choice, and I don't regret it. And you? If you were in my place, what would you do? Divorce at the first betrayal, or choose another way to protect the people you love?